Hi, today I'm going to be working on a tutorial of a pen and ink with a watercolor wash on it. It's a hawk that I have been working on recently. The paper I'm going to be using is Canson XL, and that's a cellulose-based paper. It has a fine tooth to it. It's not as grainy as maybe one of the cotton papers, but it works fine for this application, and I would like to show you so if you have another option when you're doing pen and ink drawings. The other supplies I'm going to be using are my Crow Quill pen, and then I have a standard pen with a really stiff nib, and I'll explain as I go through the drawing why I'm using this particular pen. So, thank you for coming along on this little journey. My name's Holly. Welcome to Autumn River Designs. This is the sketch that I ended up using for the bird. Now I'm laying a piece of tracing paper on top so I can show you how I laid the drawing out. First, I'm going to start with a center line. It's to locate for me how I'm going to lay it out on the paper. Next, I have a circle for the head. And then I'm going to put another center line in. Because the bird is turned to the right, I define the back of the head. And I'm going to put a triangle in just to show myself where the beak is. Gives myself another anchor point. Back to the body, kind of an oval on the body, and I am locating the feathers on the back. Just roughly getting things in. From there, I'm going to put in 2 triangles for the feet, gives me another anchor point, and it's where the bird is going to sit on a branch. And starting off with some clear water on the beak. From here, I'm going to be dropping in some lemon yellow. It's going to be a very thin, watery mixture, tea consistency as they call it. So I'm dropping it in. I'm going to let the water do the work for me. Once I'm done with the yellow, then I'm going to take the black and I'm going to drop that in also. And because the water mixture is underneath, it's going to let them blend together beautifully. The brush I'm using is a number 6 silver black velvet, and I'm going to be using the black velvets almost all the way through the whole project. And now you can see as I drop the black in, it's just going to almost meld together as the black and the yellow mix. Another wash of water, as I'm going to be working on the head next. So I'm just going to get that whole area good and wet. I'm going to start off with burnt sienna, just going to very light mixture, and we're going to drop that in. And after that, I'm going to pick up some black with my brush, and we're going to lay that in also. Now, you don't have to get too fussy. This does not have to stay in the lines. It's a wash. And actually, in some ways, it'll make a nicer looking painting if you can actually move outside the lines and let things get a little looser. The only thing is I wouldn't go running it over top of the beak. I want to keep that area as clean as possible. But otherwise, I would just let it go wherever it wants. So at this point, I came back in with a damp brush and I actually lifted some of the paint from underneath the beak. I thought it was too dark and I really wasn't sure I liked that. So I started to remove a little bit around that area. Now, what happens is later on, I go back in and I darken it anyway. But at this point, I did lift. And you can do that with a damp brush. Just go back in and gently remove paint. I'm going to start working on the back feathers now. So I'm laying down another wash of water and there's just a hint of black in there. I'm just getting the area wet because I'm going to start dropping in some color. dropping in some black here and there, just letting the water do the work. I love watching this process, and it can be as loose as possible. Just let it flow. Starting off with the inking process, this is going to be the first pass. This nib is very, very stiff, but what I like about it is it gives me a uniform line, and I'm going to have several passes and I'm going to make it very dark. But this is the first go around, and I'm just laying in how I want the head to sit. This is the second pass, and you can see how much darker the line is getting. And I really want to emphasize this. I want it to be very dark. You can see here how I build up the layers. I want the outside line to be very dark and very bold. Now I'm using my crow quill pen, which has a much finer line, and I'm just going to lay in the feathers on the back. This pen is a lot easier to use. It's a lot more flexible. It's almost like drawing with a little pencil. I've moved over to the breast now, and with the lightest line possible and as loose as I can be, I'm just going to put the body of the hawk down. Just keeping it loose, expressive line. Now, when I get down to the feet, I almost overemphasize them. I really work on the shape. I'm not going to have any color down here, so what I want to stand out is the line work itself and just the general shape of the, I guess you'd call them talons. a wash of water on the feathers, and I'm going to be adding some Van Dyke brown here. So first we're going to put down a layer of water, pick up some Van Dyke brown, very, very loose, and we're just going to drop it in. And once again, I'm just going to let the water do the work for me. I'm picking up some burnt sienna now, and I'm just for a little bit of interest and a little bit of color in there, I'm just going to drop that in also. And with a damp brush, I'm just going to gently move the paint around just to blend it slightly. This is going to be wet on dry. I'm just going to add a little bit of interest here along the beak. And with a damp brush, I'm just gently moving the paint around. I'm just going to blend it in. Another wash of water on the breast, and then we're going to start off with a hint of purple, and then we're going to work in some yellow ochre. Just dropping it in, letting it flow on the paper. And I just love the look that this gives me. I'm going to fill in the eyes using, of course, the black paint. And then I'll go in a little later. I'll use a little touch of white gouache just for the highlight. I'm using yellow ochre to lay in the feathers on the breast. Now, this is a little bit heavier consistency on the paint, so I'm going to say coffee because it's definitely not as light as the first wash, but it's not a cream or anything. And just sketch them in. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. You just want to get the general idea. It's just a hint of a feather. I'm going to be darkening the feathers on the back, just like I did on the head. You can see how this pen makes a much darker mark than the crow quill does. And now I'm going to fill in the feathers with my crow quill. This gives me a much finer line, and I just love the look. Here's the finished piece. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this gives you some ideas of some pen and inks you can do. I will link the supplies below.